everyone. Welcome to another GardenStateHSWrestling.com podcast. Near fall back points. We'll figure out a name eventually. I don't care. It's Donald J. Brower. We're ready to start this wonderful, wonderful season. And I'm telling you right now, it's time. It is time. Wrestling has just kicked off. Officially, practices started yesterday. I hope we're not dating this for the podcast. It started, if it's dating it for the podcast, it started sometime, but now you're going to figure out when we record this podcast. Wrestling has started. We were worried. We're not worried anymore. There has, however, been one casualty in regards to wrestling. Dover has been informed they will not be wrestling this season due to the district deciding to suspend all sports. That's a final decision. So we're going to find out eventually in the next couple weeks, couple days. Will they count as forfeits? Will they just be non-contests? Will teams be able to replace Dover on the schedule? We're not really sure. It's an influx kind of thing. But there is wrestling. And like I said in the previous podcast, schedules 99% updated. I think we may have one or two stragglers. We have the preview videos will be up next week. Just waiting on one or two more info sheets. As I said, they won't be in practice. I'll have some kind of cool ways I film some stuff, but it'll still be hopefully as informative as you've usually seen. And, we'll get that all rolling, and that should be ready to go by, I should have all the videos up here. Season kicks off on the 16th. I'm aiming to have them up by the 14th. So give or take, I'm going to try to get everything up as soon as possible. Excited for today's show as well. We got a really good interview with a man who I've known very well. Cowboys fan, but I'm a Giants fan. Can't be too close to him, but no, he's a really good coach and is always helpful. Hunterdon Central head coach John Cantagallo-Rohm is going to join us for a little bit, talk a little bit about everything going on. Quality coach with a really good team this year. It would have been great to see them wrestling in the team tournament, which, switching the kind of gears a little bit, if you know the announcement on the first, they have a state tournament. It's going to be a little different this year. What's going to happen is, instead of having districts, it's going to go right to super regions, and there's going to be a limited amount of people invited. So I don't know if they're going to do that with PowerPoints. There's going to be a selection committee. Think of it almost like March Madness for wrestling, which sometimes it's good because you obviously know those top guys who are going to get in, but it's always the mid-majors or the under-school guys who, sometimes surprise some people in districts and regions and make it to Atlantic City who aren't going to get the chance this year. Now, this is only 1 year. So please don't get upset. This is 1 year. And realistically, they couldn't have it the way they've had the last few years. So they went this way. I understand it. I would be highly upset if this is the new way going forward, but it's 1 year and what they have to do, or they would not have a state tournament. And honestly, for everybody who was complaining, this is what USA Wrestling said they were going to do. So we kind of have to do what we have to do. And we will get 8 medalists, so that's not going to be a problem. They're going to decide where everything's going to be. Well, hopefully we've heard rumors about it's going to be at Rutgers. There's some rumors about Princeton. And the way they're going to break it down is each session is going to have, for the days, is the girls' tournament is going to be the 10th. And I think I was reading it was the boys' tournament was the 24th and 25th. They're going to have different sessions, 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. 10 a.m. is going to be 4 weights, so 106, 113, 120, 126. They're going to wrestle. Then it's going to go to the next group, and then vice versa the next following days. So that way they're not cramming everybody in at one shot, which could be a little disconjointed, especially if you have, for example, a son who wrestles. You want to watch both of them. You have to go there. The one will be finished. You'll come back. But it's the sacrifices you have to make. And I think it'll be real interesting. Hopefully we'll be able to get some fans in there and enjoy it. But who knows? We'll see. We got to have parents in there. Obviously, I think a lot of places will defer for senior parents or upperclassmen just because it'll be their last shot for a lot of them in the high school level. So it is what it is. But before we get to our interview, we got to also talk about our sponsor. You want to talk about champion athletes. Dan Warnikoff. We've already said it before. We'll say it again. It's like I'm beating a dead horse right here. Dan Warnikoff helps produce winners. Don't believe me? Go talk to Pat Glory. He'll testify and say everything you need to do. A lot of Hanover Park kids, a lot of Del Barton kids. Doesn't even need to be wrestling. He's done it with other sports in other states, and he's also helped average people who want to cut weight and feel healthy and not feel like you've just basically run in a treadmill or been in a sauna for a while. I said it before. I'm a fat guy, and when I wrestled, I was heavyweight, so I didn't have to lose weight. But the guys who were there, they would be in plastic bags running around trying to cut weight. That's unhealthy. So go to Dan Warnikoff, championathletes.com. He's the man you want to see. Now let's kick it to our interview with head coach John Cantagallo-Rohm. Joining me on the podcast this week is Hunterdon Central head coach John Cantagallo-Rohm, the third coach in program history, which dates back to what, the early 40s, mid 40s. I think it's been around a while.
This is our 65th year.
Yeah, right around there. Yeah. But just thank you for taking some time to talk to me, Coach. Just tell me a little bit about, kind of how did you get involved in wrestling? A lot of people like to know. They see you as a coach. How did you get your start, and how did you get here today?
Honestly, a friend of mine wrestled in high school. I didn't even start wrestling till I was a freshman in high school, really. A friend of mine got me into it, and it was a rough road. Obviously, when everybody starts out, the majority of wrestlers kind of take their bumps and learn the tough lessons along the way. I was one of those that did that, but was fortunate enough to go on to the next level and compete D3 in college as a freshman. And then transferred and had the opportunity to walk on at WVU. And actually, we had a really good program at the time. So my opportunities to get mat time were very limited. So I was approached about a coaching opportunity while I was still an undergraduate at West Virginia. So I gave up my eligibility to take over a high school program in Western PA while I was still an undergraduate at West Virginia.
Now, what was that easier? Because a lot of times you said you started a little later. Was it easier? You kind of say, listen, it's easier for me to transition now to coaching. Was it hard for you to walk away, or did you just kind of find a better niche? Because you've always seen that with certain guys who they wrestle well, but then when they get into coaching, they're so much better at teaching than doing, if that makes sense. What was it about that made you kind of want to take that jump?
I was always passionate about, even in the room as a wrestler, always passionate about working with the younger guys in the program. So I guess it just kind of made sense to make that transition into coaching, and a great opportunity presented itself to me. And, I probably wasn't ready to be a head coach at that time. I mean, I was only 22 years old, and I was coaching wrestlers who were 16, 17, 18 years old at the time. But again, baptism by fire. I jumped in and coached out in the Whippeal in Western PA, which at the time was packed full of talent, guys who went on to be national champions like Greg Jones and Troy Letters. I had the opportunity to coach against. So it was an awesome experience for me and really laid the foundation for me becoming a coach. I moved back into Jersey and had the opportunity years later to jump into Phillipsburg in their room. My wife grew up in Peaburg. Her dad was a football coach there for years. And so he introduced me to the guys in the Phillipsburg room and kind of got back into wrestling. And years later, end up at Hunterdon Central. And here I am. This is my 11th year with the program, 7th year as the head coach, I believe.
I'm pretty sure you were the first new coach I talked to when I started the site, because you had just taken over. I remember it was when I got started lecture, it was like, okay, and then it was like, here, this is the guy, and then I'm like, who? And they're like, oh, just message this guy. I'm like, okay. And I was like, okay, and it was, I remember it was a huge thing, but yeah, it's been about 7 years. So I mean, yep. But taking over a program like that, you're talking about a program being the third head coach. It has such a long, history, and just the program. It was the pressure there to kind of step, because you had said you weren't ready at 22 to take coaching. You're kind of out of it. Now you're in one of the top programs in the state, and some would even say the country, because you guys did host up until this year, unfortunately, one of the longest running annual tournaments, individual tournaments. There was a lot of pressure stepping in. How did you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, the pressure was there. There's no doubt. When you have one losing season in school history, the pressure is there from the beginning. But it's something that if you embrace and understand that, you have the resources in the community to help support such a successful program, which is why it's been successful for so long. You have a lot of the old timers who want to see the success of the program. You have a lot of parents who are vested in seeing the program succeed. So the hardest part was me coming in and kind of bringing everybody in together to help keep the program running at such a high level. So when I realized that was what I needed to do, was not focus solely on the wrestling aspect, but focus more on community building and building the program off the mat, it made the transition a little bit easier for me.
Now, you mentioned resources in the community. Obviously, this year has been a strange year for everything. We didn't know what was going on. We really didn't know when the season was starting. And now they just announced yesterday that there is going to be a state tournament, but districts are eliminated and no team tournament. I know you guys were, would be one of the top teams, as well as hosting a district, most likely District 17, or did that switch this year? I know it's been such a jumble the last few years when they kind of toss everything up. But I know with being in the district, you guys would host that. Has that something like this affected you guys? Because obviously a lot of teams can't fundraise, and you want to keep everything going with the limited season we have. Has that something like that been hurt where you can't make that, fundraising money from a home match and do stuff? And what do you guys do to kind of counteract that to make sure there's not a landfall for future generations?
So we traditionally do very well fundraising, again, because we tie into the community. We get a lot of support through the local businesses, a lot of support through the alumni association that we've built. We haven't had those opportunities this year. So we've had to work with the Booster Club to be a little creative. And we're going to offer, kind of like you see in the NBA and MLB and NFL with the cardboard cutouts. We can have some fans in the stands, but we're going to try and fundraise by, now you can have your picture there at every home match, and just doing things outside of the box. I think that's more than ever. It takes creativity with the program to ensure the success. We've had to kind of temper our expectations moving into this season, just and more so be thankful for whatever opportunities we do have. I was in discussions all summer, probably starting back in June, with a lot of other coaches around the state about, hey, what can we do to ensure that more so the seniors have an opportunity to compete in a state tournament. So those discussions had been going on kind of behind the scenes for months now. And it's great to see that the NJSIA took, I guess they got word of it and really took it seriously and stepped up to the plate. I think it's fantastic, even though it's modified. Again,
for a year.
For a year.
It's not permanent. This is not like a new solution.
Nope. And I think that's what it comes down to. We have to be appreciative. We have to be thankful that we have to understand that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be far from perfect. There may be times where we're not rolling out, or other teams aren't rolling out a full lineup because of COVID or restrictions or whatever it may be. So each time we get an opportunity to be in the practice room or go out and compete on the mat, we just have to be thankful for those opportunities now.
Now, you mentioned with some of the seniors, obviously, and fans, and you probably want to get the seniors' parents in because you got a really good senior group. I mean, the leadership you have there with Norm Sella and Colton Wachowski and some of those guys who are really top notch. You don't have to worry about them getting picked to qualify for Super Regions. They're pretty much on top of a lot of guys' lists. Talk about them, and I know we've discussed, in your years there, Colton's already above 100. Norm has an outside chance depending on how many matches you got. He's right there at 85 wins. How do you have them approach it? Because obviously we had said with team, you would have been one of the top teams and they want to compete. How do you get them motivated, and going into their last season? Because you don't want them to feel, I don't want to say gypped is not the right word, but you want them to have the full experience of a season by going out there.
The tough thing is Colton Wachowski, if we had a traditional season, Colton would be on pace to break the school record for wins, which was set by Hunter Graff a few years back at 142, I believe it is now. He was on pace. If he had another year similar to what he did last year, he would have broken it. And then coming in behind him, Tanner Peak would be on pace in a traditional year to break that even again. So, with guys being seniors like Norman and Colton, it's nice having that leadership coming back. But but they're both in the mindset. They understand we're trying to have at least the team experience in that team environment. But more so for them, it's going to be more than ever focus on what they need to do as individuals. We're going to embrace what opportunities we have to compete as a team and really focus on their success in the postseason. Those guys are both focused on climbing a little bit higher up the podium. Also, Tanner Peak coming back and just missing out by one round, getting on the podium. We have Nick Canonico, who was a state qualifier last year, so another one who's looking to get back. So it's really understanding that, hey, you guys are going to have opportunities. It may not be what you want, but at least you're going to have an opportunity to represent your team in dual meets and an opportunity to do the best that you can as an individual in a state tournament.
Yeah, it's like one we were saying, it's one of those weird years. You never know how it was going to turn out. We're happy to have some sort of season. I just, like you said, I feel bad for these kids who have, for example, like you're saying with Colton, he would be on pace, and it's kind of like nobody's going to remember that in 15, 20 years. Like, oh, well, why did he only get, looking at his record 104, say he sweeps, why did he only get 120 wins? He was good, but he wasn't that good. And it's like, no, well, wait a minute. His senior season was a whole different year. Well, he didn't get as many opportunities, but like you said, I think it's good what they're doing. I'm kind of waiting to see where they'll be. I know a lot of people have been talking about I don't think it's going to be at Atlantic City. I don't think that's a possibility for what they were talking about, but have you heard anything where they might be holding postseason stuff?
I've heard there's a possibility of Rutgers.
Okay.
That's one of them that I've heard. And I think that would make the most sense, especially being more centrally located because the way they're setting it up is that they're doing only certain weight classes and that group is going through. I think it just makes more sense to have those groups go in for the day, wrestle their tournament, and then go, rather than trying to get everybody down to Atlantic City.
I think that'd be the problem is you get everybody in there. At least here, you're isolating it by the 4 weights. You bring them in, they do something. So if something happens, you're only really, God forbid, knock on wood, something happens. There's a contamination of 4 weights instead of 14.
Correct.
It works out that way. But Coach, I want to thank you for your time, taking a little bit of your time out here to do this. I know you're anxiously waiting by ESPN to see if they sign Dak Prescott. I know you're a big I apologize for that. I'm sorry, fans of Hunterdon Central.
It's a tough life.
But thank you, Coach, for taking the time. And it's always, you've been very helpful with everything. Anything you need, please let us know, and just have a really good season this year.
Awesome. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much for having me on, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Definitely, Coach. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Coach. It's always good to bust your chops a little bit about some football in the off season, but I'm really hoping and wishing success for Hunterdon Central and all teams as a whole. With a lot of these squads, especially individually, some of these teams will have representation, but they were more gunning for the team tournament. I think Hunterdon Central is one of those rare where they have a really good squad and some depth coming back. And I think they're going to be really well on both sides. And the individual tournament, as it's going through, I mean, he's got 16 wrestlers who saw time in the lineup last year. So they should be one of the few teams who can basically go on a run here. But I want to switch gears a little bit. I know I've gotten good and bad vibes from this recently, from my political statement. So Jared, this might be putting us off of YouTube onto another level, but I want to talk about hypocrites, and I want to talk about one of those fake righteous people. Governor Andrew Cuomo, who spent his last 3 years talking down on how horrible someone speaking their mind was, turned out to be, guess what? A typical scumbag. It's come out in recent weeks that he has sexually harassed 3-4 women in the last few years. And this is Mr. I am equal rights, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And he, if I remember correctly, closed the pay gap to where it was even in New York. Sounds like he might have been feeling a little guilty about grabbing some interns' asses. So I guess it's good to figure out that, the hypocrites are. Everybody's talking about this guy for president. I don't see it. I didn't even like him as governor because, as I said, you want to do some research. This is the guy who refused to give permits for the Tappan Zee Bridge unless they named it after his father, who used to be a governor. And don't even get me started on his fake-ass Fredo tough brother, Chris. I see that guy, I'm punching him in his face. He's that little guy. You know who he is? If you ever watch the old Looney Tunes, he's the chicken arm. I'm Chris Cuomo. Shut up. Anyway, I'm super excited. Like I said, we have the wrestling coming up. I'll get off my political soapbox. We'll wrap this up. Wrestling, we got the season kicking up. There's no more trying to create anything. The wrestling kicks off in 2 weeks. He said, if you want to help support, I know you love, what I do. Click on the sponsors. If you're a sponsor, send me an email. If you want to do anything, please let us know, because you helping me helps me get the word out. So shoot me an email at admin@morriscountyhswrestling.com. You can tweet me at Morris County HSW. We're on Instagram under something, probably Morris County HSW. We're on YouTube, which you probably might be watching this at Morris County HSW. So for the podcasting genius, the man of the hour, the man, the myth, the legend, Jared, I'm Donald J. Brower. We'll see you next week.